But you were initiated in Bird Place? Or, oh, Tribhangananda Square. So same time? Same year? Okay. Yeah. This is 73? 72. In Trafalgar Square. So both these devotees were initiated at the same time in Trafalgar Square. So by Srila Prabhupada, we were hearing the other day about the fire yajnas in Trafalgar Square. Confessed by Krishna's mercy. So they'll be sharing some pastimes and realizations with us, and also we're hoping that Mother Rama Shakti and also Mother Manohara will share something with us, because today is deity history, and we're trying to also keep in the mood of sharing with the devotees who are presently serving directly here on Silver Street. So first we're going to start with Dhirasanta Prabhu, who has a wonderful slideshow, and he'll be sharing with us some vintage photographs of Srila Prabhupada in the UK, some of which you'll see that he very kindly sponsored and donated for us to be able to use here in the temple during the festivities. So we're very grateful. Dhirasanta Prabhu traveled quite a long ways to be with us today. So please let us welcome Dhirasanta Prabhu and Tribhangananda Prabhus, who's also traveled very far, all the way from Leicester, by chanting very loudly 3 Haribol. Haribol!
Slideshow. Interesting how I obtained the slideshow. I was in Los Angeles looking over some slides in the archives, early 80s. I wanted to find some slides of myself with Srila Prabhupada, and as I was looking through the archives collections, I noticed all these different slides of Prabhupada in England, and brought back lots of memories for me. So I decided that rather than just take a couple of slides of myself with Srila Prabhupada, I purchased from the archives a total of 160 slides. So this is Prabhupada in the UK from 1969 to 1976. In one sense, you could say it's the second phase of Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara's pastimes in regards to the spreading of Krishna consciousness in the UK. So what you've heard so far from the devotees from the early days, this is a continuation of that. Apart from these slides of the actual installation of Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara by Srila Prabhupada, all the other slides are after that period, from 1972 onwards. So these are a collection of slides of Srila Prabhupada on morning walks, room conversations, Rath Yatras, deity installations, his arrival in the airport, and his arrival at the 2 different temples, Murali Place Temple, and the first time when he came to Bhaktivedanta Manor. So, and then also Srila Prabhupada sitting on the lawn of Bhaktivedanta Manor. Srila Prabhupada recording sounds, bhajans. So it's a whole variety of slides, and I hope you will enjoy it. It's accompanied by some music. This music was done some years ago. It's called The Garland of Songs. And I think that the music itself is very appropriate to the slideshow. Thank you.
So if everyone could just please move forward.
Turn the music on.
Mental soul, his heart is never cold, so peaceful and poetic, with a message true and bold. He's never seeking praise, so silent and so great, and his transcendental love is the magic in his ways. And when I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go, and will I taste the love that he's feeling inside. It's always meek and mild, with a warm and friendly smile, so simple in his living, singing all the while. He sings out Krishna's name, his glory and his fame, to serve his Lord and Master, in pleasure or in pain. And when I see his love, I know I got a long, long way to go, and will I taste the love that he is feeling inside. Rasabhavitamati kriyatam jadi kuto vilambati. This Krishna consciousness I have taken from this word, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavanamati. This is the actual translation in Sanskrit. So, Rupa Goswami advises that Krishna consciousness, if it is possible, please purchase. Don't delay. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavanamrita Kriyatam, purchase immediately. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavanamrita Kriyatam Jarikuto. When it is available, it is a very nice thing. Yes, it is available. You can purchase. The moment is going on. And what is the price? Price. It is such a nice thing. You have to pay price. Yes, there is price. What is that? Simply you heard. That is price. This price you have to pay. Then you get Krishna.
Lotus keep giving me such shelter. Lotus hands brush my tears away. Lotus eyes soothing my broken heart. You rescue me from my endless pain.
Every day it was wonderful.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Vande Guru Shri Radha-Londonishvara. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Gangara Parasha. Pashtate Bhavangar Shane Pavitra Koro Eitamaranu Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavan. Guru gave books to cure me of diseases that come with this age. The love got full of spiritual pleasure. He revealed on every page. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Vande Guru Shri Radha-Londonishvara. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu gave a call. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My dear grandfather, spiritual master, and to you I must humbly pray that this serpent-like non-devotee in the dust of your feet will stay. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Vande Guru Shri Radha-Londonishvara. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Halistane Aparadhe Jale. Harinam Samastane. Aparadhe nahi paricha. Srila Prabhupada Patita Baba.
Krishna is not poor. And the Krishna sailor, the Krishna devotee, he is also not poor. He can distribute Krishna free, and he is doing that. Simply you have to purchase by eagerness. That is what. Tatra laulam. No eagerness, I have got eagerness. It is not so easy. Tatra laulam ekamullam. Janma koti sukriti bhina labhati. These eagerness cannot be achieved even by past activities for millions of births. If we simply go on doing pious activities, because without being pious you cannot approach Krishna. So if you go on doing simply pious and Janma Koti Bhi, Sukriti Bhi, Sukriti means pious, simply pious, still this eagerness is not available.
Before you came our lives had gone to hell, without a chance of recompense, where each of us would sell his heart and soul for fleeting gain, bewitched by Kali's grin, yet shackled by our own desire to lead a life in sin. Before you came, oh Prabhupada, our empty life was resting. An endless chain of birth and death was all we'd ever tasted. The bitter juice of Maya's fruits had burned our hearts like fire. But then you came and brought us back to life by your desire, your desire. I come from man and saffron cloth with skin like molten gold. You strode into our frozen lives and melted hearts grown cold. You simply preached the Yoga Dharma, Lord Chaitanya gave. Just chant the holy name and dance, there is no other way, no other way. No other and no one gave as much as you, nor will they ever give. You built a house of touchstone in which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you, nor will they ever give. You built a house of touchstone in which all the world can live. The world can live. The prophecy of Lord Chaitanya you fulfilled alone, in 10 remaining years of life, far from your native home. You smashed the words of hollow fools who gathered in defiance of common sense, who killed us all in the name of modern science. You broke the teeth of Mayavadis, charlatan gurus, and all who posed as men of God, but never had a clue. You founded temples, Gurukula, farms and DBT, translated almost 40 books for all humanity. You gave us Sri Sri Radha-Krishna, taught us how to cook, and showed us how to preach like you and distribute your books, your precious books, your precious books. And no one gave as much as you, no way I can give. You built a house of touchstone in which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you, no way that I can give. You built a house of touchstone in which all the world can live. The world can live. The world can live. So warm your voice, so sweet your glance, you smell the sandalwood. You brought Vrindavan's loving mood wherever you walked or stood. But guiding us you sometimes changed from rose to thunderbolt, and showed the kind of mercy that would wake us with a jolt. I couldn't pastimes lay beyond the sight of shallow fools. Yet by your kindness even we were drowned in blissful pools of nectar talks on morning walks and visits to your room, quite unaware that you would leave your ISKCON all too soon. Is out the dress of bone and flesh, is bound to meet destruction, but I will never leave the one who follows my instruction. How much you more cooperate will show your love for me, and you left us in Tribhangananda, in deepest ecstasy, ecstasy. Ecstasy. And no one gave as much as you know will they have from you. You built a house of fresh stone in which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you know will they have from you. You built a house of touch stone in which all the world can live. The world can live. The world can live. Oh Master, Sri Prabhupada, our shelter and our guide, please help us try to spread your sacred mission far and wide. Please help us try to see ourselves as really very small, dependent on yourself and Krishna, lest we slip and fall and lose the precious vision you so freely handed down, that God Himself is with us in the form of sacred sound. His holy name unlimited transcends all time and space, but only by your mercy we receive His divine grace. His divine grace, His divine grace. And no one gave as much as you know will lay out for you. You built a house of touch stone in which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you know will lay out for you. Built a house of touchstone in which all the world can live, the world can live, the world can live. Yet some may feel that now you're gone, there's no one left in charge to carry on your lifetime's work and save the world at large. And some may try to twist your words for selfish motivation, to lose themselves and hold their sway in mental speculation. Some may think we know the score, the others have no clue. We force our views upon the rest, for we're the chosen few. Yet some may break the fourfold vows and do forbidden acts, until the mighty force of time uncovers all the facts. Some may take your opulence, some use it as their own, until they see their foolish ways or find themselves alone. Yet some may follow others who have questioned your decision, and so deny themselves the chance of reaching timeless vision. Some may preach that all is wrong, that he's as good as you, until he's turned to mouse again by you, Jagannatha. While some may only see the faults and simply criticize the ones who do your preaching work with self-surrendered lives. Some may feel that all is lost and leave your ISKCON mission, quite unaware that you're still here to heal all cracks and chisels. While some may feel that, lost from sight, you're ever out of reach, but they should know you're always with the one who strives to preach. Wise men fear to speculate, but know just where to look, For everything you have to say is written in your books. The books to last 10,000 years, 400 generations. The golden age of Lord Chaitanya built on your foundation, your foundation, your foundation. I know one gave as much as you, nor will they ever give. You built a house of touchstone, which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you, nor will they ever give. You built a house of touchstone, which all the world can live. No one gave as much as you, nor will they ever give. The house of touchstone, which all the world can live, the world can live, the world can live, the world can live.
Eagerness is very important thing. But it can be happened by the association of devotees. Therefore we are giving chance to everyone to involve that eagerness. Then you will see God at work. It is not difficult. Tatsadhana munayo. Those who have developed that eagerness, faith, that I must see Krishna in this life. This life is meant for seeing Krishna. It is not meant for becoming dogs and hogs. Unfortunately, the whole civilization is going on. They are being trained to become dogs and hogs. It is the only institution that is teaching people how to see Krishna. This is the only institution, this Krishna consciousness. It is so important. Tasthadadhana munayo jnana vairagya juktaya. By eagerness, automatically you will be enriched with knowledge and detachment. Knowledge does not mean now we have discovered this atomic bomb. That is not knowledge. What knowledge this is? People are dying. You have discovered something which will accelerate death. But we are giving some knowledge to stop death. That is Krishna consciousness. This is knowledge. Jnana vairagya. And as soon as you get this knowledge, automatically you become detached to all this nonsense material elements. Thank you.
His heart is never cold, so peaceful and poetic, with a message true and bold. He's never seeking praise, so silent and so brave, and his transcendental love is the magic in his ways. And when I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go. And will I taste love in his feeling inside? It's always meek and mild, with a warm and friendly smile, so simple in his living, singing all the while. He sings out Krishna's name, his glory and his fame, to serve his Lord and Master in pleasure or in pain. And when I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go. And will I take days, love that is beating inside.
I can understand you enjoyed them. I see it so many times when Eric's actually playing. A few minutes ago. Doesn't matter how many times you see it, it becomes ever fresh. Sri Radha-Londonishvara. 1968, I was at my home, living with my parents. I was a hippie at the time, and of course the best television program in those days was Top of the Pops, and this particular week I had a surprise because in the #1 spot suddenly the devotees came on the stage. It was a complete contrast to what we were used to seeing. Usually long hair, guitars, big drums. And suddenly the devotees came on with their robes and shaved heads and saris. Playing redundants and kartals. So, in one sense I was a little bit disappointed, but little did I know that at that time a seed was being planted inside me. The actual music, the record, the Hare Krishna mantra was a #1 for, I think it was about 6 weeks here in the UK. So it was very popular at the time. And then, as it's probably already been mentioned, it was followed up by an LP where the different songs from the Goddess of Fortune were recorded by George and the devotees. Somehow or other I was at a friend's house and it was lying on the table, and some reason or other I asked to borrow it. I don't know why, but all I could see was the album cover with Radha-Londonishvara on the cover. But when I took it home and played it, I started to play it every day, to the point where actually I stopped listening to all my other music. That's the effect that it had on me. About a year after that, I went to London. I had a job going to rich people's homes and cleaning their homes while they were at work. One of the homes that I used to go to was Spike Milligan's home. I never actually met Spike Milligan, but I used to speak to his wife, because they regularly went to India, and I used to sit down with her, she was speaking about India, and also I was going to the temple at the time, and I was talking about the temple. One day I came to the temple, and Kishore, one of my godbrothers, was preaching to me. He was sitting on the stairs, and I was at the bottom of the stairs, standing. And in those days, you actually believed that as a hippie, you were something very special. That if you weren't God already, then you soon would be. So with my long hair, beard, you have to play the parts. Suddenly, Kishore bowed down right before me, and I was thinking, wow, that's pretty good. He's already understood me. Well done. I'll come back here again. But as he got up, he said, oh, that was my spiritual master. Because Prabhupada went from his room to the bathroom, which was outside in London. He said, that was my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And if you like, you can come and listen to him tonight. He's giving a class at the temple. So, although I was a little disappointed that he was not bowing down to me, I thought, well, let's give it a try. Unfortunately, I came a little late, and that's typical of hippies. We have no conception of time, and we were freelance and independent. But as I walked into the temple, Prabhupada was giving a class. He was sitting on the Vyasasana on one side of the temple, and on the other side, Radha-Londonishvara. It's a little opposite to it. So actually, if you came in the door this way, that's how it would be. Prabhupada was on the left, Radha-Londonishvara was on the right. So I decided not really to sit anywhere near Srila Prabhupada, but to go as close to the deities as possible. There was only at that time a rope separating the deities from the devotees or the guests. And as I sat down, I was actually being very offensive to Srila Prabhupada and thinking that he was just an old man and what all these young people were doing, sitting listening to an old man. This was certainly not the time. Hippies, we had rejected the previous generation because they did nothing for us. And we were starting the new revolution in consciousness. And therefore, there was a rejection of listening to older people. And when as I was thinking like that, devotees started to turn around and look in my direction. I know that some of the devotees here have heard the story before, but since there's some that haven't, I'll just tell the story again. But I couldn't understand why they were looking at me, and this went on for at least 10 minutes, and then I did understand what the problem was. And the problem was that I hadn't changed my socks in 7 or 8 days. And my feet were smelling quite bad. And it was emanating throughout the room. And it was so bad that even, I think it was Lila Shakti at that time, she went behind the altar and didn't like just one incense stick. She had a bunch of incense. She wanted to counteract the smell. So this is how you get brought down to your proper size in the presence of the pure devotee and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Prabhupada finished his class and left the room, the temple room, the devotee called me over and he said, do you want to come back here again? I said, well, yeah, I think I would like to come back here again. He said, do you think you could change your socks before you come? So I said, yes, okay. So I did that. And to this day, I've changed my socks every day. So this is how when one becomes a devotee, it's automatic. It's automatic, it's Krishna's orchestrating. He's the supreme orchestrator, and suddenly he orchestrates to us individuals and sets us a certain standard and pace in our life, where it means we have to change. When I eventually joined the temple, at that time, Tribhangananda Maharaj, he was actually the Swami who was local, he didn't travel at all. He just stayed put, and he was actually training us in different things, learning Danga, learning how to sing. And I remember his help with me. He would tell the devotees, "Hey, see that person over there? He's a saint. He's definitely going to become a devotee." And anyway, one time I asked him, what does it mean by becoming a devotee? I mean, how do you know? How do you know if you should be a devotee? And then he just told me very straightforward that he said, "You won't need anyone to tell you. You will know. You will know the day. The day will come when you just say, yes, I want to be a devotee." So I became a devotee, and as it's been mentioned, I got initiated in Trafalgar Square. Tribhangananda was also there getting his initiation. It was a very hot day, and we were also on top of the sacrificial fire, so it was doubly hot. I remember that so clearly. And the next day, when we were supposed to give Prabhupada some Guru Dakshin, we went. In those days, we didn't actually get money from the different devotees around. We had to go on the street, because devotees didn't have any money. So we were approaching, the gentleman, the English gentleman with the bowler hat and the brolly, and asking them, "Please, sir, I just got initiation from my spiritual master yesterday. Is it possible that you could give a little Guru Dakshin?" And nose in the air. "What? Guru Dakshin?" So anyway, "Oh, here, go on, be off with you." So they would get a donation, and it was embarrassing for them because we wear our traditional clothes. We never hidden from the limelight of being a devotee. And the next day we came to Srila Prabhupada. We were ushered in, and I think there was about 7 of us came into Srila Prabhupada with the collections that we made collectively, and we had it in one envelope. And I was the one who was pushed to speak. We came in, we paid our obeisances, and Srila Prabhupada was not actually looking in our direction. He was chanting japa in one corner. And when he turned around, we paid our obeisances again. And then I said something like, "This is our Guru Dakshin to you, Srila Prabhupada, an appreciation for you giving us Diksha initiation." And then we paid our obeisances again. And then Prabhupada asked his servant to give us a Mangalarti sweet, which we didn't know whether to eat there and then, or wait until we went outside, so we just ended up paying our obeisances again. And by this time, Srila Prabhupada was amused because, within a short time, we've already paid our obeisances 5 times. And then he just said, "Oh, thank you very much." And then we paid our obeisances again. And then he ushered the servant to usher us, to take us out, and then we paid our obeisances. So 7 times we paid our obeisances, and then staggered out the room. And if you can try to imagine, the room was, probably half the size of this room. So it was quite an intense situation. And I asked the servant, I made a statement, "Well, we really blew that, didn't we?" And he said, "No, it was perfect." He said the disciple is supposed to feel like a fool in front of his spiritual master. So that was perfect. He did okay. So in those days, we didn't have any books, but we used to go on Harinam every day. They had BTGs, so some of us would distribute BTGs and some of us would be on the Harinam party, going alongside the Harinam party, distributing the BTGs. I was a little bit deviant one day, and I decided not to follow the party with my magazines, because there was one shop that I noticed was blasting out all the music that I used to listen to, Pink Floyd and all these groups, which I was naturally still attracted to, and I started to distribute the magazines outside this shop, which was blasting out the music. And I was thinking, well, this is comfortable. A little bit for Krishna, a little bit for me. And it was comfortable up to a point, because one day I came along to do a similar thing, but then suddenly the music changed, and suddenly I heard the sound, Govinda, Hare Purusha. So that was Krishna basically telling me, look, if you want to listen to some music, listen to this. And the party used to go down Oxford Street. We used to leave after breakfast and come back for lunch about 12 o'clock, and used to shower and take lunch, and then after lunch we would go out again, up and down Oxford Street from Bury Place and back. And there was one fruit vendor who really didn't like this, because in those days we had fruit vendors actually on Oxford Street. They would park their fruit container and sell their fruit just like that on the street. So naturally they had to listen to our chanting 4 times a day. And one of them was just really upset. And each time we passed, it was almost like that demoniac nature within was coming out. And it was not very nice for us to see. Sometimes he was just raging with frustration. And one day he just flipped it. It just, it was just the ultimate in frustration for him. And what he did, he let the kirtan party pass, and then he grabbed the last devotee. He grabbed the last devotee and started beating him. And this devotee, he screamed, "Haribol!" And we all turned around and saw the situation. And everyone just jumped on this guy, except for me, because, as a hippie, I believed in love and peace. So I just looked from a distance and watched. And I just cannot forget the sight of this. It was just amazing. The devotees were literally on top of this man, beating hell out of him. And one devotee, Padmalochan, he was so enthusiastic. He had his cartel swinging, hitting this guy in the head. Something that you probably couldn't do this day, because you would get sued. But in those days, it was a little bit different. When they finished with this guy, he was like, he just didn't know what hit him. And then the devotees just got up and just, carried on the kirtan. And the next day, this was what I was fearing, because he could have gotten a whole pile of persons friends to attack us. So I was at the back of the kirtan, being very sheepy, expecting something to happen. But to my surprise, this man, he was there, for sure he was there. And he was bruised and, plasters all over him. But he actually ushered the devotees down the road. Yes, Hare Krishna. So it was like my love and peace was immediately kicked out of the whole scenario. And to that day I realized that real love and peace is not this sentimental, love and peace, give peace a chance, and all these songs that we hear, we've heard. It's a little bit sentimental because, and it's also dry, and it's not real. Real love and peace comes from the holy name and the association of devotees, even if they're beating you up. This man definitely got full-fledged mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And he didn't become a devotee in the real sense, but at least he was appreciating the devotees after that they were not sentimentalists, and even though we were wearing dresses or skirts or whatever they like to call it, we had a philosophy and we had a way of life, and we had principles, and in no way were we going to let any devotee be beaten up by a non-devotee. So he was very appreciative of that, and he welcomed the devotees every day after that. So very soon, very place became too small. Well, before that, let me tell you that in the evening time, we all looked forward to the evening kirtan from the Radha-Londonishvara. Tribhangananda Maharaj was very, very special in the sense of leading his kirtans to the point where the devotees literally jumped high in the air in ecstasy. He would wear these black gloves. Well, he used to wear gloves, but he also put tape around. That's right, tape around the glove, so that when he was beating the drum, he would not cut his hand, because he was really very enthusiastic in leading the kirtan. And I don't know about Tribhangananda. You were actually in Manchester, so you never actually.
I spent quite a bit of time with
you did, yes. It was a wonderful experience to come before the deities, Gora Arti, and jump and dance in ecstasy. So I was saying the temple started to get very small because there was lots of devotees joining. And it was a test for us in one sense, because to take rest during the evening, during the night time, we had to find any available space. And devotees were, I remember the temple president was sleeping on his office desk. There were devotees on the stairs, sleeping on the path, on the corridors. Just literally wherever you could find a space, you took rest. And it was a test, because a test of faith. Because here we were doing all this service for Radha-Londonishvara and Srila Prabhupada, but there was so much, we were confined with so little space, and we would question, well, if you're God, can't you give us a bigger place? Surely you're God and you would like a bigger place. So this is kind of a little bit, I remember at least my mood at the time was that we can't possibly live like this forever, can we? Anyway, then of course the Lord did arrange something, and we got back to Vedanta Manor, and to say the least, it was such a contrast, living in very place to then suddenly having Bhaktivedanta Manor. For me, it was a little bit too much, actually, because still these hippie tendencies were dragging on in me. Too much opulence. I'll stay in very place. But a lot of devotees moved over to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and as you saw the pictures of Prabhupada first arriving, and instructing how to build the altar, because at one point the devotees were using wood that was already used for Rath Yatra the Rath Yatra cart. And he said that you cannot do this has already been offered. So you must find some other wording. So they were going to use that to build the shrine, in fact, in Manohara. And then I remember at that time, Prabhupada gave a series of classes. The makeshift temple was in the theatre room, and he gave a series of Bhagavad Gita classes for at least 5 or 6 days. And he was literally condemning us British for what we did in India. And each day he made certain points, what actually we did to the way of life in India, which I won't go into detail. But in his last class, he put the icing on the cake. He said, "Have you seen the camels in India?" And he imitated the camel, with his nose in the air and walking like this. He said, the camels in India, they're the incarnation of the British Raj. Prabhupada had his way of diminishing your national identity. And I would say for myself, within those 5 or 6 classes, he managed to convince me that I was not a British boy. I was not British, but I had taken up Krishna consciousness and I'd become a Vaishnava. And it was very, very clever how he did that. I just didn't feel like being a British after those classes. So I readily accepted, yes, now I'm a Vaishnava. So, what other points did I have written here? Oh, so much. How much time do I have? Well, there was one other point I forgot. In the very place, when the temple was getting overcrowded, the temple president, who at that time was Dhirasanta, who was from America, he was the temple president, and he decided that we should start traveling and distribute books. So some books came. I think that they were the higher, not the higher taste, maybe the higher taste, but Easy Journey to Other Planets definitely was there. And he wanted to come himself. He was the temple president, so he wanted to show the example. He led the party. There was Prabhu Vishnu, there was myself, and there was Jagat Bandhu, he lives here in London. And we were the first traveling Sankirtan party. We had a transit van. We had the books laid out on the floor. On top of that there was a board. And 2 of us at night times would sleep on top of that board. And then there was another board which was put halfway between the roof and the basement of the car. And 2 devotees would sleep on that. And in the morning we would take a shower, and we would find a university residence where there was showers. On many days you could easily walk in to the shower department and take a shower and walk out again. And another thing that we used to do was, this was a little later when Prabhu Vishnu joined us on traveling Sankirtan. He suggested that we go door to door after the day's Sankirtan, go door to door and actually collect our boga, which was what we did. We would knock on the door and we were dressed in Vaishnava dress and say, "Excuse me, we're sorry to disturb you, but we're traveling monks. We're traveling all over the country and giving Krishna consciousness. Do you have anything that you can donate?" And we would mention the things that we wanted. Butter, more butter, milk, and I forget the list, but
Semolina.
vegetables, fruits. And they would go back into their kitchen and come out with whatever they had. And then, then we would meet up after 1 hour with our collection and put in the car. So it was a really nice lifestyle that we had. That not only were we distributing Prabhupada's books, but we were also trying to be as much as possible self-sufficient by acquiring donations from the local people in the town. So it was great. So I just want to finish off by thanking the devotees who joined in the early days before myself. They set the pace, they set the standard, they set a good enthusiasm for us young devotees who just joined. Without their laying the foundation of Krishna consciousness here in London, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did as a follow-up to that. So I'd like to thank them. I'm sure I speak for all my God brothers and sisters who joined after that time, that period. We're very grateful to their coming from their country to this country and establishing Krishna consciousness here in London. They are my seniors. I can only look up with bowed head and look up to them with all reverence. They're very special devotees, there's no question of that. And I hope that someday I will come close to getting even just a drop of the mercy that they have received from Srila Prabhupada. Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara ki, Prabhupada ki, Jai Guru Prem. Thank you.
So I would like to invite Tribhangananda, Prabhu, please, if you could. Sorry.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. It's a very famous mantra. So, I'd just like to start by offering my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Om Agyan Tamandasya Jananjana Salaka Chakshuram Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namahom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vasudaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachaya Nivasesha Srimhani Stutana. This mantra is something that takes on more and more significance, hopefully, as we progress in our spiritual lives. These mantras are offering appreciation to Srila Prabhupada. There was a time when I would do these things as a matter of course, bow down just recite the mantra. But I have to admit that thinking more and more about what Srila Prabhupada has actually given us is a very stunning experience and a very humbling experience. And actually, when we think about the meaning, I'm offering my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. These mantras are very powerful, and they're very helpful for us when we're doing such a simple thing that we may do 5 or 7 times a day, or however many times we may do that, at least 3 times a day, to meditate and think actually what we're doing in our lives. I have to say that the whole experience of, from beginning to come in contact with Srila Prabhupada's mission to as far as hopefully we've got in the current day, has been an experience of gradually becoming conscious, gradually becoming conscious of our existence, of our foolishness, our ignorance, our rascaldom, and our rebellion against the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and trying to cooperate with Srila Prabhupada to try and turn this whole thing around, so that instead of being totally foolish, ignorant, rebellious, rascal nonsense, trying to actually gradually become Krishna's devotee. And that's actually the whole experience from beginning to end, in a nutshell. So, when it comes to talking about the early days, and today's theme, you want to talk about the deities' history, I have very little knowledge. I must admit that I came to Krishna consciousness movement by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, by one of these wonderful BTG magazines. I read an article in there, and that was where I felt I first made my connection with Krishna consciousness. It started to make some impact. I feel actually that was my first meeting with Srila Prabhupada. Just hearing something that he wrote, just reading, hearing, same thing. If you actually hear, you actually read, and it starts to sink in, and it becomes very meaningful. So that was where I first came in contact with Prabhupada, in an ignorant condition, taking LSD, but somehow or other, at that critical moment, getting to read a Back to Godhead magazine. That was such a powerful moment. And then, by the grace of Mahavishnu Das Brahmachari, as he was then, and Rancho Prabhu, who had very kindly come to Manchester and given us that blessing, and who were busy distributing magazines and running this small little building, this little house in a seedy area of Manchester called, appropriately, Lower Seedley Road in Salford. They come and started a temple, and finally mustering the eagerness and enthusiasm to come and visit the temple, standing on the doorstep and feeling, wow, this place is like an island in the whole cosmic flux of the universe. This is the one solid place we've ever come across. And coming inside, and from there Mahavishnu very kindly, patiently, trying to deal with me and answer my questions and try to put all my so-called appreciations of what life was all about at that tender age of 17, put them into perspective so that I could make sense of the universe and life and everything. Mahavishnu as he was then Prabhu, he very kindly gave us a little prasadam. It was probably because it was a Sunday evening after the guests had already gone, and my suspicion was that it was actually the leftovers from the plates of all the other guests. But whatever it was delicious prasadam. And it made a fantastic impact. And along with the kind kata that Mahavishnu gave us, finally it started to make sense. And it came to the point of just, okay, well, I guess I might have to move in the temple then. That's it. Actually, funnily enough, it wasn't even a question of even asking, well, should I move in? It was just the obvious thing to do, because Mahavishnu's preaching was so straightforward that there was just, that was the only path left in life, actually. Very wonderful. Nothing else to do. Very excellent preacher. At least he sorted me out a little bit. Well, actually, no, he didn't sort me out, but he actually put me on the path towards gradually coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada and trying still to get sorted out and get to be all right. Anyway, what happened, the devotees were preaching, and somehow or other, I'm coming to the point of the deities, because I got sent up to Manchester, from Manchester, after I'd finally moved in there. I got sent up to Edinburgh. You may have seen that big temple room where Prabhupada's sitting on a big, lonely Vyasasan, and there are a few devotees there bowing down in front of Prabhupada. That was Edinburgh. I got sent up there. We used the company car, the thumb. We were hitchhiking. This was what we had. The only other company vehicle was actually Rancho's push bike. So we somehow or other developed from very humble beginnings. And after some time in Edinburgh with Tribhangananda Prabhu, which was a really amazing experience, seeing really fired up devotees. After a few months, they sent me down to London. So again, it was with the company car. And so many wonderful experiences would happen along the way, including hitching a lift from Edinburgh, which if you've ever driven up to Scotland, you know it's a really, really long way. But somehow or other, I was quite surprised that practically immediately I got a lift in a very nice Jaguar car. And the chap brought me right to the front door of the Buried Place Temple. It's just really, Krishna is so full of surprises. But then the big surprise was going to come, that I went into the temple room that evening, because it was late at night by the time we got there. And I remember seeing this sort of bright glow down the other end of the temple room, but I couldn't quite work out what it was all about. The next morning when I came down from Mangal Arati, I gradually realized that actually there was Radha-Londonishvara at the other end. And actually in all my months I'd been in the temple, nobody had ever mentioned to me about the deities. Somehow or other, I didn't know anything about Radha-Londonishvara. I must have been, I suppose, too serious and impersonalist to have thought it was probably unwise to start telling me about the deities, whatever it was. But somehow or other, after a few months of being in the movement, I discovered the deities of Radha and Krishna. But everyone here is very fortunate, because you come and immediately you can't miss them. They're so kind and so beautiful. So, as you know, there was the Radha-Londonishvara and Gauditai, and above Radha-Londonishvara were the beautiful forms of Lord Jagannath, Lord Balaram and Lady Subhadra. Very wonderful temple room in that upturned boat. Inside the upturned boat, that was the wonderful effect of the wooden archways that Shamsundar Prabhu had built in the temple room, all the way along this long temple room with a blue carpet in it, from what I recall, and Prabhupada's Vyasasana at the other end. So anyway, gradually it was a learning curve, and Leela Shakti Mataji, she very kindly engaged me in some service. My first service directly for the deities was actually installing the spotlights for Radha-Londonishvara and Lord Jagannath. That was a very nice service, because although I wasn't actually initiated, she let me go in the deity room so I could put these lights in. So that was real mercy. And somehow or other we learned a few things along the way. But the most wonderful experience, which I didn't even know at the time, was when Prabhupada first came to my experience of coming to Bury Place. And I remember it had been a very dull day, a typical London miserable, grey, rainy day, nothing to write home about. But then Prabhupada was coming. He was coming from the airport. And to this day, I'm still not sure if they brought him back in a Sankirtan van or in a taxi. But the feeling in the temple was one of great excitement that Prabhupada's coming. And I'd never met Prabhupada at all, but finally he came. And just a few moments before Prabhupada arrived, the sun burst out and it became a beautifully sunny day. And it was so fantastic. And then Prabhupada arrived, and with such a big smile, he got out, and all the devotees were outside the door of Bury Place, having really wonderful kirtan. It was just so much of a nice adventure. So we had darshan of Prabhupada, his beautiful smile, and then we had very intimate darshan of the pavement outside Bury Place. And then we waltzed in the temple, and it was such a beautiful experience. Prabhupada came, and he sat on the Vyasasana and spoke to us about Krishna. So many experiences we had there in Bury Place. But one of the wonderful experiences that I recall was later on, when you saw in Bury Place, possibly, there was Prabhupada's big red Vyasasana with the elephant heads on the front of the big bolsters. I mean, gigantic affair, this Vyasasana being built. It was an extraordinary thing. But Prabhupada, although his form was physically quite small, he seemed to fill the Vyasasana just with his presence. But then later, they built another Vyasasana, a blue one, that one that we saw in the picture also. And that was brought up near to the deities. There was a beautiful big picture of Prabhupada sitting there, looking so serene and so grave. And then underneath was Prabhupada's Vyasasana. And Prabhupada would sit there in the mornings, and when we got the Srimad Bhagavatam, we got the new editions of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Prabhupada came, we started speaking from there. So Pradyumna Prabhu, he would recite the Sanskrit, and we would gradually learn how to actually pronounce the Sanskrit mantras. We had very little idea. And Prabhupada would sit there on his Vyasasana, looking out at us over his glasses, with his Bhagavatam in his hand. Here's Radha-Londonishvara, the Supreme Absolute Truth, right in front of us. And here's Prabhupada speaking from the Bhagavatam, trying to explain to us about who this Supreme Absolute Truth actually is, looking sometimes over his glasses at the deities and looking at us, and putting his glasses on to read from the Bhagavatam. So the experience was something like, you might think, sleepy little kittens curled up, just trying to wake up, because it was a very stuffy little temple. I don't think it was wider as far as the temple is concerned, than this wall to this pillar. I'm sure it wasn't any wider than that. I believe it was quite a bit longer than this room.
It was difficult to stay awake.
It was very difficult to stay awake, just like now, because I'm speaking softly. I haven't started shouting yet. But there was no ventilation in the room. I think you've improved it a bit now, which is very good. But in those days, there was a couple of windows at the far end of the room, and there was one ventilator fan, which didn't really seem to do much, and everybody else seriously breathing all the oxygen in the room, which was quite difficult. So for people who weren't used to getting up and waking up early in the morning, sitting there with Prabhupada in a packed temple room with no oxygen, trying to stay awake was quite tricky. Somehow or other, we managed to hear at least some of what Prabhupada was saying, which was very fortunate. And somehow or other, Radha-Londonishvara have stayed here for us. And Lord Jagannath and Balaram and Subhadra have stayed here for us all this time, and very patiently waiting for us to wake up, and hoping that we'll develop, as we heard on that those very nice presentations made by Dhirasanta Prabhu earlier, that we'll develop that eagerness, that lolya, that greed to know Krishna, to meet Krishna, to see Krishna. Just like when I came here today, I saw that there's so much enthusiasm. This is such a nice temple. You have such fortunate devotees here. So much eagerness to chant Krishna's name and dance and sing and make life successful. It's really a wonderful experience. And this is really the great blessing of all those days. Whatever insignificant, tiny little parts we played in going out on Sankirtan, in trying to assist in some way, making ghee-wicks, any little services we did for Radha-Londonishvara, chanting, dancing, hearing Rabbatananda, trying to understand something about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The result is all of you. Everyone here who is now eager to serve Krishna. Some devotees who have developed some appreciation of Krishna, some appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. The result is so wonderful that the deities are more beautiful than ever. They're so, so beautiful. And they're being worshipped with so much love by all the devotees here. It's such a wonderful experience to see how their lordships are being so nicely cared for 40 years later. And all the devotees are so enthusiastic to take care. So I don't really have very much I can speak, apart from thank you all very much for taking such nice care of each other, and for taking so much care of Srila Prabhupada's mission, for continuing to hear what Prabhupada is tirelessly prepared for us in Srimad Bhagavatam, which he's continuing to speak to us all the time, just if we open the covers of Bhagavatam and try to hear what Prabhupada is trying to tell us, that here is the absolute truth. Here is our position, that we are the Lord's eternal servants, and here is our chance to go back home, back to Krishna. So thank you all very much indeed, and may your service go from strength to strength in trying to push on Srila Prabhupada's mission. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Tribhangananda Prabhu ki. So I think Murali Prabhu is also going to join, and he's prepared a little slideshow. While we're waiting for him to come, does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Yeah, something.
In my poor understanding of who is Krishna, I think I understand that somehow all deities are no different from Krishna, so they're all the same.
Deities of Krishna, yes.
They're all, but there is a difference between different deities, isn't it? Like deities in Bangladesh, in some sense they're different than the deities in London. Is there something specific, personal you know about these deities? What is specifically pleasing to them?
We'd like to hear you.
Well, one thing that if I recall the early days of taking prasad, Radha-Londonishvara Mahaprasad, and taking it today, that same flavor is there. So it's very mystical. The deities are very mystical, and they have a certain pastime. They have a specific mission and flavor, and it's experienced in everyday life as a devotee, serving them. When the devotees saw that I was coming every day to take the Sunday feast, they asked me, would you like to come every day for lunch? And I agreed to that, because I didn't really have so much of attraction for anything else other than taking prasad. And the prasad was so special. The Sunday feasts were knockouts. Tribhangananda Maharaj used to cook the Sunday feast sometimes, and Gopal used to cook other times. They're both wonderful cooks. They were trained by Sri Radha. So a Sunday feast was, you could give 10 classes on it, you still won't come to understand the inconceivableness of the Sunday feast in a very place temple. And I would say that's how I actually cleansed myself from all the mundaneness of my previous conditioning, was just taking the prasada. I didn't know at the time when I was taking Radha-Londonishvara's prasad that it was having any effect on me. But one day after leaving the temple, I was on the top of a double-decker bus, and suddenly something very mystical happened. Krishna started to dance on my tongue, and I said the name Krishna. Krishna. Hari Krishna. Krishna. And then I started to really chant. I was chanting all the way home. When I got home, I was chanting and chanting. I couldn't stop. The next day I came back to the temple. I said, you know, I have a problem. I said, what's your problem? Well, I keep chanting your mantra. I couldn't stop chanting last night. So the devotee then, he smiled and he said, do you know what you've been eating the last 3 months you come into the temple? I said, well, it's just good food as far as I know. He said, no. It's called prasad. Prasad is Krishna, and Krishna is prasad. Don't worry about a thing. Just keep coming and eat. So with that, I gradually started becoming attracted to the other aspects of Krishna consciousness. But that is, I can safely say that the Radha-Londonishvara prasad is very, very special to this day.
I can perhaps say one other thing, and that is that these deities, beautiful forms of their lordships, are very, very special. I've heard it said that Prabhupada, he considered these are the most beautiful deities in all of ISKCON. So you can know that the Lord has come in a most incredible form. Prabhupada was very much attached to these deities of Radha-Londonishvara. Even when he was at Bhaktivedanta Mana in his last days, he wanted to come, and he came to take darshan of Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara. They're very, very beautiful. They're very special. And we should appreciate them with great respect and great love and affection. And pray to them that we can become servants of their servants of their servants. That's what they would. And certainly they're very merciful, because London is not renowned as a very spiritually auspicious place. Actually, we're here in the heart of Soho, which is spiritually it's a death trap, actually. But still, they're so kind that they've come here to attract everyone. And they've come in such a way to inspire the deepest spiritual emotions. So as far as the specialness of these deities are concerned, you can see the potency that all these wonderful devotees are here. And I can only say that what is the potency? You see the potency through the way the devotees render their service here. There's one devotee who I met here a few months ago. He was busy cleaning upstairs in the Brahmachari ashram, and he had such a blissful smile on his face. And I asked him, Prabhu, what's the secret? You know, what's the secret that you keep staying so enthusiastic? And his reply was, menial service. Actually, this is his reply. This is the secret of what keeps me enthusiastically. Just rendering menial service to the devotees. But here, they're encouraging everybody to feel in their hearts how to be a menial servant. So this is special. This is very unusual. This is totally wrong as far as the material world is concerned. But here, it's totally right. So we're getting a lot of mercy here. I'd
like to welcome His Grace Murali Prabhu, who's had the opportunity to serve their lordships for almost 20 years, almost 20 years now. And so we've invited him as the head pujari for the last 5 years, 6 years, no more than that. Like 10, 9 or 10 years. Yeah, actually, you were head pujari when I came, so almost 11 years probably. Yeah, so 11 years serving as the head pujari. And I mentioned earlier in the week that Murali Prabhu actually on Monday, after the festival is finished, he'll be going to Mayapur for 3 months to study there with Nishri Gavacha Prabhu and the other senior devotees, Janani Vasprabhu and Pankajangala Gurus, who are leading the deity worship course. Actually, Mother Jamuna mentioned the other day to me, she's also going from here for that.
Really?
She'll be there during that course, and I told her that you were going to be there, and she was very excited actually. She said, "Oh, something very special is happening," is what she said. So this is very special, but Murali Prabhu was supposed to leave the end of October to start the course beginning of November, but in a very surrendered mood and with great enthusiasm, he has stayed on to be part of this celebration and to help manifest these glorious darshans that are happening each and every day. So please, with great enthusiasm, let us welcome Murali Manohara Prabhu and encourage him to speak something about their lordships.
Vishnu Krishna Style Shanti Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Charini Namaste Sunivadi Prashtataya Satari Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. As you might imagine, I was asked to speak about a week ago and I was quite hesitant. I feel much more comfortable being behind the curtains, picking up pins or cleaning the floor, being out in the spotlight. And also hearing the devotees speak throughout the week is even more hesitant, seeing how seeing the depth of their love and affection and their Krishna consciousness. Humbly, devotees asked me to try and say something, so try and say something. But I was just reflecting actually how this last week has been really phenomenal. I mean, it's not over yet. We've still got a couple of days. And the phenomena, especially for me, is hearing from these devotees, Gurudas, Bhavati, Shyam Sundar, devotees here, Tribhangananda, Shantanu, how much they're really for me, it's like a revelation of love. A revelation of love, and you see how deep their affection and attachment to Srila Prabhupada is and to their lordships. And I was thinking that I've never really experienced this type of love before, I've never really seen it, because I came from a Western culture, and most of the families are not exactly working so nicely together. But especially this week, seeing really some a real manifestation of love, and that's how Krishna works. I was also reflecting how listening in the week and how hearing how the wonderful adventures of Gurudas and Shyama Sundara and what they went through to establish the deities here. How Krishna is very expert at churning the heart, churning the heart and not letting anything go easy. He always creates a drama. And I was thinking in that regard, like, I was scheduled to not be here, and I had my ticket, I paid for the ticket, and I had the date set. And I was feeling hesitant to go because I knew what a wonderful time it would be, but it seemed like I thought, yes, it must be that way because I got my ticket. Destiny has ordained it. But it was a whole drama. But the devotees, and that's what I experienced as well. I just like to appreciate the devotees because I was really quite overwhelmed by the love and affection that they actually showed me in wanting me to stay. And so when finally the temple president came to speak with me, I was easily persuaded to stay. So let's speak about the deities, Radha-Londonishvara. They have their ways of making things happen. I remember their mystical ways. Although we are not perfected devotees, we are, at least definitely for myself, at the stage of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, practicing the rules and regulations because I have to. But still the Lord directly intervenes in our lives. Sadhaka or Sita, the Lord directly intervenes in our lives, and especially Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara. And they, from my experience, they handpick their servants. They actually handpick their servants. Not that I was handpicked. I explained it at the time when I took up the service of being a Pujari. I was on book distribution, and I was struggling on book distribution, and I wasn't doing so well. It was nothing to do with book distribution. It was my approach to it. It was my lack of realized knowledge. And I was doing book distribution for about 6 years. So, and there was, as we know, book distribution is very dear to the Lord. And I was trying, and I was very much trying my best to actually surrender to that service that was given to me. But inside I was crumbling, so to speak. That's the way I could think of it. I was really struggling out there on book distribution. Again, not for the service itself, but to my approach to it. I was too attached for different reasons, and actually I was in trouble. I was on book distribution, and I was struggling, and I remember I wrote to my spiritual master about my struggles. And I never even, because there was so much, as we know, especially in those days, perhaps even now, but those days especially, book distribution was really emphasized. I mean, it is now, but we know in the past it was really, really emphasized. So I would never dream of giving up that service. Just trying my best to carry on. But the point I'm coming to is that Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara could see my struggles from within the heart. He could see my struggles through the via medium of my spiritual master. There was one day my spiritual master asked to see me. This was actually the book distribution got moved to Bhaktivedanta Mana just for a few months. That's in 1996, and it was there that he asked to speak to me. And I was very excited that my Guru wants to see me, so expectant and excited. And he said, so tomorrow, the first thing he said is, tomorrow you should go back and be a full-time Pujari. You should go and surrender to Mother Archana and ask for service. So for me that was a major thing, because I never dreamed of such a thing. So I tried, so I was, what can I say? So I said to my spiritual master, so I said, so just for a couple of months then? Just for a few months while things are difficult? Because like there was a short of Pujaris. So I thought, okay, so just a few months then. And he said, however the lordships want, however long they want, so perhaps 6 months, perhaps 2 months. That was over 10 years ago. So I remember coming back, and actually and this point really came home to me, because when I started actually doing Pujari service, and I started actually to do Pujari service, it was what they call, it's just what the tailor ordered, or just what the yeah, excuse me, not tailor, doctor. It's just what the doctor ordered. It was kind of just what I needed, just at the right time. And it felt very much like, and I felt so much faith in the Lord and my spiritual master as the right medium, for actually watching me all those times struggling on book distribution. So the Lord is always with us. He's always watching our struggles, and we should very much have faith in the Lord and be patient and have faith in the Lord. So Radha-Londonishvara, I see, they were so merciful that that they pulled me quite close. And Navadvip always says, he always explains when Navadvip, Navadvip who comes, who was here for many years, very dear devotee of the lordships. He takes care of the lordships, Jagannath, Baladev and Subhaja during their sickness time after Snan Yatra. And he always says very humbly that actually some owners, they may have different dogs, and there's some dogs that they let off the lead to run around, but the bad dogs they keep very close. They keep very close. So I said, yes, that's very much like my situation. And I'm convinced that materially speaking, I have no hope. So the lordships, by their mercy, pull me very close, and I won't take too much time. Time's getting late. I'm sure the girls are hungry for breakfast, but yeah, one position, one point I wanted to mention as being in the position of head pujari is that, actually I'll just backtrack a bit, how I came to be somehow head pujari. I don't know how that happened, but somehow it happened. Well, again, it was the Lord's arrangement. I remember I was sitting here chanting japa one time, just in front of this post, and I was chanting japa. It was just like as Dhirasanta was explaining. It was one of those rare occasions where your japa's japa. It's really nice. And I was just chanting, and it felt like my heart was, opening up, and it was like nectar. And in my mind and in my heart, I was, here, Krishna, and surrender to you, whatever you want. And the darshan became, every time it's beautiful, but it seemed like the lordships were like opening up their curtains a bit, and I was chanting, kind of surrendering as best I could in my heart. And then, and I wasn't head pujari at that time, and then about 3 hours later, or perhaps the next day, or very soon after that, Mahajutru asked to see me, and Mahajutru was very expert at helping, or very expert at explaining to devotees why they should do a particular service. And that on top of what I was experiencing before, Mahajutru explained the situation, well, this devotee, this happening, this is happening, this is happening, this situation, so this situation is going to not happen like this, so actually you're the only person on the planet who can actually do this service. And because I had that experience of chanting, I was just, Hare Krishna, yes, I can try my best to, and somehow or another came to that position. But the point I wanted to perhaps finish on here is just to mention how, what a wonderful position actually. In one sense it's a position of responsibility, but in another sense it's a position to actually see the spontaneous love of so many devotees. Yeah, so many devotees. I think especially here in the last week as well, my experience of being head pujari, and I have so many devotees coming to me where they just want to do anything and everything for their lordships. Yeah? Is there anything I can buy? Is there anything I can do? And it's a spontaneous love. It really is. Some devotees, they will, like, for instance, devotees who have done this work on the altar, as Anantacharya Prabhu, Satyanarayan, Madhvi, Shital, effortlessly staying up all night, no question of sleeping until it's done. And this doesn't just happen once. This is their devotional sentiment all the time. And so many other devotees, so much spontaneous love. Mother Vimala, for example, she's not rendering service because she's been told to. There's no way. She's on a very exalted level of spontaneous love and affection. And other devotees as well. There's so many devotees. Like, if I begin to start to mention them all, we will not have breakfast. But it's a wonderful education for me. It's always astounding for me to see how much love devotees have for their lordships, and how much. And I was also thinking as well was that there's this saying that that you can't see the forest for the trees. This saying, I was thinking actually, so many devotees have real love for the, as we experienced this week in hearing them speak, they have real love and affection for Prabhupada, and they're serving out of a spontaneous love. It's not rules and regulations. So sometimes, again, we can't see the forest from the trees. But if we could just stop, open our eyes and look, and we can hear and see devotees are we're surrounded by very exalted devotees, serving with great affection and love. So for me, this is one of the highlights of being in a humble position of head pujari. It's just getting association with so many devotees of rendering so much spontaneous service, and the lordships reciprocate the devotees in so many wonderful ways. Some often devotees. What time is the final time? But so many devotees always ask me, "Have you had any dreams? Any special realizations or dreams?" I must admit, I sleep quite well. Don't have too many dreams. But they're not so good. Occasionally. But I just reveal one little dream I had. It's very nice. One dream I had, I remember when I had dreaming when I had one dream when the lordships Radha-Londonishvara, they was, do you know how when you take prasad and you sit on one knee with your leg up? Radha-Londonishvara was down by the plate off the altar and was taking prasad and all like that. It was taking so much prasad. Another dream, just a couple, and dreams that is a little bit amusing, but as you know, going inside I often need painting because their eyebrows like that is often a thing, and I tend to put it off, until devotees, literally come to me. You have to get all these eye painting. And so one time I had this dream is when the lordships going inside needed painting, and in this dream I looked down the stairs, and I could. Well, first of all, I was waiting for the pujari to bring the deities upstairs to bring, and then I heard this. And going inside were jumping up the stairs, They couldn't wait. So the next day I thought, okay, I've got to get them painted. Another dream I heard about another Rama Shakti Sishan, she's not here, she's hiding away somewhere. But she does, especially in the past, she has service of waking up their lordships, and often she's busy. Often she might be late. She has to be woken up by different devotees because she's so busy. Again, spontaneous, loving service. But this time she had this dream, and she had to wake up the deities, and Radharani was rubbing her shoulder. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! So she woke up in the startled. She looked at the time, and it was, sure enough, it's time to wake up the deities. She quickly got dressed and woke up the deities. Just finish on this one last. Also, one time I had this dream, wonderful dream, a little glimpse of the lordships and how they are actually the lordships. It is Krishna. They are non-different. It's the supreme personality of Godhead, or more than that, it's Krishna who plays the flute in Goloka Vrindavan. And what's this? And I dreamt that I just finished dressing the lordships, and I looked towards the temple room, and Adi Guru Prabhu, dear God brother, he came towards the altar, and he pointed out something on the lordships, Krishna, that was not quite right. And I turned around to Krishna, and Krishna at that point he wasn't a deity anymore, because he's not a deity. It was such it was fully, it was Krishna. It wasn't, again, he wasn't standing like this, and he was just, his eyes were, I don't know if it's too confidential, but it's not too confidential, but I couldn't resist telling it. I've told other devotees before, and they said I should try and share it. And his eyes were just like you hear, when you hear the Lord describe, he has red eyes, and he has his red eyes, and it's out of rasa, of love, that his eyes are, and he was just intoxicated. And he was intoxicated with rasa, and it was like a rasa of bliss and love, and he was just so happy, and it was like the whole temple and the whole place was pervaded with this indescribable bliss and happiness, like a big envelope of bliss, like everything on the planet. Looking at Krishna's smile and his happiness was like the whole universe was, drenched in his happiness. It was just completely intoxicating love. Then Krishna said to Adi Guru, no, everything's just fine. Everything's alright. So that is one of those rare times when you wake up and there's no modes of material nature. You can speak this for a few seconds. Sri Sri Radha-Londonishvara ki jai, Radha ki jai, Subhadra ki jai, Shiva Prabhupada ki jai.
Actually, I think we can probably go on for hours. We should pull things to a bit of a close, at least for now. And
thank these devotees who come today and shared so much with us. Thank you very much, Brother Manohara, for sharing those things. He was definitely a little shy, you could say, about it. He spoke very wonderfully. And Tribhangananda also, thank you very much for coming. These devotees also had late night last night at Bhaktivinoda Manor, so should come and give us their association.
Well, also you only asked me about 10:30 last night, but you wanted to ask me, so I apologize that I wasn't really able to collect thoughts for you.
So, please let us express our appreciation of these devotees. I'm chanting again very loudly for you. Hari Bol.